Welcome to Transforming Human Consciousness. I am Kevin Geola, and this program is sponsored by the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Claremont. In the last century, we became aware as a humanity of a new consciousness, a spiritual principle, that we are one human family, we come from the same source, we believe in the same creator. And as many contexts as it takes, we are bringing that reality, that consciousness into reality, actually. And my guest today, who is going to be adding another dimension to this whole concept and taking us further, is Blanche Grant. Blanche is a professional storyteller. Everybody loves a storyteller. Everybody loves stories. And also a new word that I learned, a word weaver. Word weaver. Yeah, that's wonderful. I never had heard that. She is an educator and works with children, and I'm hoping that we can get a taste of your skill and your talents today, Blanche. What is storytelling? What, you know, for generations, people of all cultures have been sharing and enjoying it.
Yes.
Well, from you as a specialist, what is the storytelling?
Well, it's a way of transferring information.
Okay.
Foremost. It's communication, Kayvon. I'd rather like to speak personally. For me, storytelling unlocks doors to one another. The vast repertoire of stories to choose from out there allows you to set up a program for children or adults, schools, libraries, etc., and use those stories as keys to one another, exposing, reflecting our cultures to one another. I can't think of anything more exciting. I've been doing this for about 8 years, and come to think of it, that is only on the professional level. Before that, I believe I told stories all the time. As a child, life just was not exciting enough for me. I had to pump it up with my own stories and make it brighter and more colorful and more insightful. Then, late in my life, I discovered that there was a whole world out there, and especially a resurgence right now in America of storytelling. And I'm a part of that, and it brings me great joy.
Blanche, who are the people, who are the children who listen to stories these days? What are the makeup of your audience usually?
Well, before I answer that, I want to say that 100 years ago in America, storytelling was for adults almost exclusively.
Really?
Then something historic happened. A program launched by a woman in New York, I believe it was, and the beginning of Story Hour at libraries started. And during the years since then, there's been a common perception that storytelling is for children. In fact, the people who are most engrossed, most supportive, most intense good listeners are adults. I find them everywhere. There are followings of adults who, although they have children by the hand, are taking them to conferences and festivals, etc., they are there to fill their own needs and to have the stuff, whether it's a lesson or not, the stuff of stories reflected back to them so that their imagination can be excited and they can respond or not respond. But they love the atmosphere. They love the environment. Something is equalizing this now in America where it's all right for adults to love to hear stories as well as tell them.
Blanche, when we watch a program on TV, when we read an article, and then we hear a story from a storyteller like you, what is the ingredient that makes what you present unique?
The first and main ingredient is almost a rule for storytellers. Never tell a story you don't love.
I see.
So if I come to you with my story as a gift, because it is to be shared, if I come to you with my story as a gift in the spirit of love, it has a quality that those
So there's
other
a charge with
environments do
emotions.
not have. Yes. And also, I believe, this is a personal observation, but a story is much more effective when you're in the room together, when there's eye contact and you are breathing the same air and feeling the same heat and seeing out of the corners of your eyes the same things in the environment, which you're deprived of in a television broadcast. It is the being together. It's sharing the common space for a common purpose. And then in that environment, there are two parts to what goes on. There's the teller, who is nothing without the listeners. And the listeners don't get anything without the teller. And so time moves them into a space while they're together where a chemistry happens that cannot, in fact, happen with stories on television or other broadcasts.
Blanche, do you have a goal, a purpose, overall purpose in your storytelling, or is it because you love a story, then that's okay?
No, I think there are levels of goals that I have with storytelling. First of all, at a personal level, I do it to relieve this urge to do it. I like to do it, Kayvon. Then, when that is not exactly sufficient for my own internal complacence, then I have to say, what is a higher goal? What is my goal to the community? I serve the community. I work out of Yucaipa in a home office. I serve the community by serving the children and the elders, the libraries. I train teachers, administrators, and librarians in the art of storytelling in support of the classroom curriculum, the core classes. And I've been trained by the county boards of education in Los Angeles and San Bernardino to do that. So at that level, that is my goal. Now, there is a national involvement, too. America is really tuned in again to storytelling. And there are national organizations to which one can belong and be invited to tell stories and share in another genre, another culture in this country. I think immediately of the long-standing National Storytelling Association, which holds its annual storytelling festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, in outdoor tents.
I didn't know there was one.
Oh, yeah. And then there are international arenas for folk-telling, storytelling. Now, internationally, that has to come from someplace else because I don't travel internationally, but I do think globally, Kayvon. And I find ways, at least I'm exploring to find more ways now, to reflect that global thinking
The oneness
locally.
that we're talking
The
about.
oneness, the fact that this is a globe and we all live on it. And storytelling opens doors and gives us a peek. It reflects us to one another in a safe environment. It slowly and carefully, step by step, little by little, story by story, provides us with the insights that can lead to dialogue, and the dialogue can lead to understanding. And the understanding can lay the groundwork as the underpinnings for the establishment of appreciation, acceptance, tolerance, love, unity, and, God willing, peace.
That's right.
So I probably have never looked at it as I'm saying it to you now, but that's pretty clearly my goal strata.
And that's where you come from.
Yes.
That's you.
Yes, storytelling is very personal. Another storyteller just down the street might have a different set of goals, but I guarantee you that you can find in storytelling the elements that you need to support any worthy goal.
Well, you know, it's used in many areas.
Yes.
Where do these stories come from? Do you write them? Do you make them up? Do you pick them up? Where do they come from?
Kayvon, they come from life, literature, imagination, and all the categories under those. But off the top of my head, those would be the the three classifications. There are all kinds of stories, myths and legends and parables and fables and fairy tales, but they fall pretty clearly under one of those three. Yes.
Blanche, what would be the qualities of a good storytelling experience? I mean, what should I experience when somebody is telling me is really doing it right?
As a listener, as the audience, first of all, you should know that I will follow anybody anywhere if they'll tell me a story. That's in me. Right. I'm magnetized by stories. They don't have to be stories I accept, stories I approve of, stories that I already know, or stories that surprise or excite. I like the fact that I feel like somebody's talking to me.
I see.
Time drops away. Time is suspended. That is the main thing, Kayvon, that time is suspended. And I'd like to give you an example. I'm going to tell you a very short story. Amanda Ravenhill was 7 years old when she entered a contest sponsored by Good Housekeeping. It was called Tell Me a Story. And it was supposed to be a story that the child constructed, didn't make up, but constructed. She drew hers from family history. She got to tell it in front of an audience of hundreds at the Jonesboro Storytelling Festival. And this is Amanda's story.
Blanche, because you're going to go into the story, and I want to hear it in one span, and not to interrupt, because I don't want to interrupt the spirit of it. We're going to go into a short break.
Good.
How about if we come back?
I'll be ready.
Then you'll be ready,
Yes.
and we will be all ready and to hear the story.
All right.
Please stay tuned, and we shall be back after a short break. Well, welcome back. We are going to continue with our conversation with Blanche Grant, who is a professional storyteller, a word weaver, and we are just about to have a taste of your story.
Yes. This is the story told by 7-year-old Amanda Ravenhill at the storytelling conference. She won first prize. My great-great-aunt Jenny was born and lived on Crystal Lake, Connecticut. I'm named after her sister, Amanda. Every fall, my great-great-aunt Jenny would make some cherry cordial, so she'd have it in the winter when she wanted it. And one winter day, she went down in the cellar to get some cherry cordial. It tasted so bad, she threw it in the backyard right out the window. And the next morning, my great-great-aunt Jenny looked out the window, and there were her 2 favorite geese laying on the ground. She just knew it was that bad cordial that killed them. So she decided to make a pillow out of the feathers before she roasted the geese. And she plucked all the feathers off that first goose. And the second one got up. The geese were drunk, not dead, from the fermented cordial. My great-great-aunt Jenny took that plucked goose and she put it in the wood box behind the kitchen stove. And then she took out her knitting needles and she knitted a jacket for it with 2 holes for the wings. And she put the jacket on the goose and let it go outside until Easter. They ate the goose at Easter, but they kept the jacket at the end. This story demonstrates how we're validated by our family stories. Amanda chose to put in her prize-winning family tale the fact that she was named after the sister of the aunt that the story was about. Whenever I tell this story to children, they always wonder what cherry cordial is.
was wondering about.
They talk about what is fermenting, and these sometimes can branch off into science lessons. So stories are from many sources, and that's a small example of one, because children are great and wonderful tellers, and naturally so.
I could see how it could bridge generations.
Absolutely.
It could bridge emotions between generations, and really bridge Amanda with an older people who are hearing. It's all kinds of bridging.
Absolutely. And when you ask how is one supposed to feel as a member of the audience, you're supposed to have a suspension of time where I'm talking to you or the teller is talking to you, and you populate your story in your own mind. You know, you have an Aunt Jenny that doesn't look like the one I have, and Crystal Lake, Connecticut looks different in your imagination than it does in mine. So that's what I think is how we should feel, is that we've gone within, and we've been taken there by the voice of the storyteller, and the way the storyteller has shaped and molded the story, and we've received the gift that was freely given.
Which makes it a very active participation by those who are listening. It is really not a passive kind of an activity. You become very busy creating.
Absolutely.
With the storyteller.
It's vital. It's intrinsic to the art.
Right. So it's a joint activity.
Yes, there's an art to being an audience, you know, to knowing why you're there and what you want from it, and making sure you get that by how you respond and listen carefully.
And Blanche, we talked about transforming human consciousness, and I know that is very dear to your heart. You've been involved in many dimensions.
True.
As we have worked together in some years in the past.
Yes.
How do you use your storytelling to that end?
First, the basis is that storytelling is at the heart of humanity. At the very heart. One of the oldest forms of communication that is traceable historically. And I think that we are enthralled and we are gripped when we hear stories that weave in and out of vastly different cultures and tell us about beliefs and styles and behavior. I think it really hooks us. Now, if that happens, and if stories hook us, and they can be fiction or nonfiction, they can lead us to a new perspective.
Do you have one?
Well, first of all, I believe that we really must grapple with the idea that we cannot transform. There's just sort of a blanket feeling that, oh no, we're stuck here in a state of disunity, in a world lacking peace, etc. And I think that our task is to look at that differently, that indeed it is possible to change and imperative that we change. So among the many ways that we can approach that, to opening ourselves safely, comfortably, opening ourselves to new information that could cause a change of perspective and more acceptance. Storytelling is that route. It's one of them. It's the one I've chosen. I've embraced it because it can help me to do that in my way. It won't do everything, but it opens the doors to one another. We're starting to peek out. We're starting to listen to language for its rhythm. I love the power of speech in storytelling. I simply love it. Once you fall in love with that, how far can it be to fall in love with the sounds of the language of other cultures? And having gone that far, to interact with the people whose language that is. The idea of transforming human consciousness has a role for storytelling. I mean, think about 75 years from now, the stories that we are generating at this moment, at this time of struggle, at this time when racism in America is a heavy burden. My wish is that the stories that we'll hear in 75 years will talk about that time when that existed and it exists no more. Transformation of human consciousness is within the reach of storytellers to take that first baby step, that stepping stone, launching motion where people come together. You see, storytelling brings diverse people together because of commonalities that it points up. It broadens our scope, and in the process, it makes us better people.
Do we have to be professionals at it to be able to do it? Should we wait for that, or anybody can?
No, my plea is don't wait. I believe each of us is a storyteller because each life is a story. Kayvon, the question is, will you tell me your story?
That's right.
So a storyteller does not have to be professional, simply willing to give the gift of story.
So it is really sharing a gift.
Absolutely. You don't have to be professional. I encourage anyone who's watching to think about this. If humankind can be compared to a storehouse or a treasury or a mine, M-I-N-E, of gems, stories, attributes of inestimable value that are contained within, what a listener would simply do would be to reach inside and withdraw a gem, a story, and examine it for clarity and density and color and value. And once finding it worthy, they would proceed to polish and shape that gem for the sole purpose of giving it away to others. Anyone can do that if you accept that premise.
Blanche, do you, when you get invitations from schools, from libraries, how do they reach you?
I work from Ukaipa, and my phone number is area code 909-790-2491.
I see. So people can call you, and
yes,
they can arrange for a storytelling event.
Yes, just now I'm beginning to schedule for next summer, summer of '95, and my office hours are 9 to 4.
I see. Okay. If a person wants to learn how to do it, what is the first step?
It'd be fair for me to say that your personality really dictates how you're going to learn a story. There's no magic formula, but there are some helpful hints. I'll give a few. First of all, don't choose a story that's too long when you're beginning. Storytelling is not memorization, ever. It is, however, familiarization. So, choose a story from whatever source, and then, if it's written, if it's in literature, read it 5 to 7 times out loud. If it's in the oral tradition, just review it and repeat it 5 to 7 times. If it still holds up, and you have affection, and you still want to hug and embrace that story and live with it, then it's a good story for you.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much. I think time is coming to an end. It's so wonderful to hear it, and I'm looking forward to hear one of your stories in one of these places when you are presenting. And for our audience, if there are any questions or any comments about our program, the Transforming Human Consciousness, please contact us.
Is that the center?
P.O. Box 686, Baha'i Faith, Claremont, California. For Transforming Human Consciousness, I'm Kayvon Geola, and my guest was Blanche Grant, professional storyteller. Thank you.